Countries Americans are not welcome. These are 10 countries where Americans are far from welcome. In some cases, visiting can come with severe consequences. Think detainment, deportation, or even worse. From political tensions to safety risks like imprisonment or threats to life, these are places where being an American traveler isn't just unwelcome, it's downright dangerous. Number 1 is Iran. Iran and the United States have been in severe political tensions with each other for a long time. This has caused several strict travel restrictions to be put in place due to the potential risks for American citizens in the country. It's not just pure Americans. Even those with dual nationality face several risk factors in Iran, including arbitrary detention and cybersecurity threats that may lead to them being unknowingly surveyed and hacked. Your crime can be as simple as not conforming to their strict social and religious norms, and you could end up with punishments as big as being thrown in prison. Because of these many challenges, it could be very difficult to get a visa for Iran as a U.S. citizen. For those who have a visa and can visit, it's best to stay away, except you're ready to abide by the country's strict social and religious norms without missing a single line. Next is Libya. Libya was once a stable North African nation, but all that changed in the 2011 uprising that toppled Muammar Gaddafi. Since then, the country has been tangled up and embroiled in chaos and conflict. Libya is also suffering from severe political instability as it is currently divided, with multiple factions vying strongly for power. This political instability has led to widespread insecurity and random acts of violence, making it a highly dangerous environment for travelers. It's not even an ideal environment for its citizens, as this political unrest has claimed many lives, so you can only wonder what visitors face. These risks range from kidnapping by militant groups if you're being caught in the middle of armed clashes in certain regions, to assault and a whole lot of stuff. Libya is highly unpredictable. A protest can easily turn violent, and as an American, it's not a situation you want to be caught up in. That's why visas for Libya are generally difficult to obtain in America. In fact, the United States government strongly discourages traveling to the region. The third country is Myanmar. Myanmar, the country formerly known as Burma, has been plagued by political instability and human rights abuses. It's wrapped in conflict and violence, making it an unfriendly environment for travelers. If you're thinking of going on a tour, you should want to think more than twice before you decide to take that trip. Tourists could easily get caught in the middle of unexpected violence and may end up killed or severely injured. Because of this, the United States government has flagged trips to Myanmar unless it's absolutely necessary. This next country is probably the worst place to be as an American, but before we reveal it, subscribe so you don't miss our new content. Moving on from Myanmar, the fourth country on our list is Yemen. Yemen has been long known for unrest, but it took a huge turn in 2014 when the civil war broke out between the Rashad al-Alimi-led Presidential Leadership Council and the Mahdi al-Mashat-led Supreme Political Council and their allies. Since then, Yemen has been a red zone and is currently experiencing one of the world's worst humanitarian crises. The civil war has severely devastated the country, leading to widespread famine, disease, death, and displacement. This is enough reason to stay away. But there's more. Al-Qaeda and ISIS, Islamic terrorist groups, actively operate in certain parts of the country, posing a strong threat to the security of the area. In addition to the security threat, the civil war has created unceasing ground battles and frequent airstrikes. The humanitarian crisis serves as another risk for travelers going to Yemen. The war has led to millions of people displaced, murdered, and in need of aid. So, for Americans, Yemen is definitely a no-no. Concerning visa requirements, obtaining a visa for Yemen is extremely difficult. Due to the ongoing conflict and humanitarian crisis, the United States government disapproves and maintains that travel to the country is strongly discouraged. Number 5, in Iraq. Despite having had its fair share of challenges over the years, Iraq has made significant progress in recent years. However, progress does not equate to a complete turnaround. The aftermath of the 2003 U.S.-led invasion and the rise of extremist groups like ISIS have left the country unstable. the country still faces its own significant security challenges. ISIS and other extremist groups have been actively operating in certain regions. These terrorist groups pose a significant threat to both locals and foreigners. Outside the Kurdistan region, there are frequent violent clashes between various armed factions, including government forces, militias, and terrorist groups. There's also a big issue. Foreigners, particularly Americans, are at a high risk of kidnapping for ransom. Sometimes these kidnappings lead to the killing of the hostages when the ransom is not paid on time. Being a country filled with Islamic extremists, Americans can face very harsh treatment for their less religious stance. There's a lot to drive tourists away: terrorism, sectarian violence, murder, and the threat of kidnapping. As a result, travel to Iraq requires careful planning and strict adherence to the security guidelines that have been put in place. Coming in at number 6 in Afghanistan, Afghanistan and the United States are hardly the most cordial with each other. This relationship already places American citizens in an unsavory position. But that's not all. Afghanistan is highly unstable, shaken by ongoing conflicts and significant security risks, so visiting Afghanistan as an American is highly discouraged. The threat of terrorism, kidnapping, and violence is an ever-present situation. As a result, the United States government strongly advises against all its citizens traveling to Afghanistan. Number 7 is Venezuela. Venezuela is a country where American citizens are advised not to visit for the time being. The country is currently facing a severe political and economic crisis. As a result of the poor leadership, crime rates are at an all-time high, and basic services like healthcare and transportation are often unreliable. Random and often violent protests and civil unrest are common, and the risk of arbitrary detention is still a strong possibility. In addition to that, Venezuela and the United States government have had a strained relationship for decades, with the former being overly critical of American foreign policy in regard to economic sanctions, interventionism, as well as strict sanctions. This has led to a strong anti-American sentiment, which is fueled by the country's economic situation. This sentiment has manifested in several ways, including demonstrations, protests, and even violence against American citizens. In retaliation to the economic sanctions placed on them by the American government, the Venezuelan government has placed strict visa restrictions on American citizens, making it difficult for them to enter the country. Number 8 is Syria. At the moment, the country is unfortunately currently embroiled in a devastating civil war. As a result, anyone outside military personnel wishing to travel to Syria is strongly discouraged. The United States government has declared Syria extremely dangerous, and its citizens may face several dangers like kidnapping, violence, and even death. As a result, the United States Department of State advises U.S. citizens to avoid traveling to Syria. Next is Saudi Arabia. You may be surprised that Saudi Arabia is on this list as it's a popular tourist destination. The thing is, Saudi Arabia is sensitive to cultural and religious issues, and Americans' carefree nature can come at their expense as a result. Unlike in the United States, public displays of affection are strictly prohibited, and alcohol consumption is completely forbidden. Women who travel there should be particularly mindful of their dress code and conform to the social norms. So if you're going to Saudi Arabia, it's best to do thorough research so you won't fall into their blacklist. As for visa requirements, acquiring one for Saudi Arabia can be complex. Tourists generally need to obtain a tourist visa through an authorized travel agency. Finally, at number 1 is the infamous North Korea. It's almost impossible not to guess why North Korea made it on this list. Generally, North Korea is known to be an isolated and authoritarian state with strict travel restrictions, so much so that independent travel is impossible. As a result of these restrictions, tourism is heavily controlled. Americans who do find it possible to visit the country are typically part of tightly controlled government-organized tours. And even with government authorization, their freedom of movement is severely limited. The dangers for Americans in North Korea are numerous. The political tensions between the United States of America and North Korea further complicate matters. As a result, arbitrary detention of Americans, forced confessions, and even long-term imprisonment are not unheard of. That's about it, so if you are American and you're watching this video, cross these countries off your travel bucket list. It's a no-no. Don't forget to subscribe for more travel content.